Good afternoon. My name is Dawn McKnight, and I am the Executive Director for the Independent Association of Home Instead Franchisees. On behalf of the association's Education Committee, I would like to welcome you to the next session of our webinar series brought to you by InZone, titled How to Solve the Mysteries of Workers' Comp Part 2. Before we get started, I just have one housekeeping announcement. Please type all your questions into the chat, and we will have Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Now I'd like to introduce our presenters from InZone. Dennis Powers is a seasoned professional in the insurance industry when it comes to home health care, and he puts his expertise to good use in this webinar designed to educate businesses like yours so you can better be prepared for your unique risks. Gary Kalina is a senior commercial insurance specialist with InZone Insurance Services and one of the leaders on their home care team. He has been in the insurance industry since 2001 and has been putting together tailored insurance programs for the home care industry for 9 years. Now I'll hand it over to Dennis and Gary to begin the presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Dawn, for having us, and thank you specifically for having me. Many of you out there probably know my co-presenter, Dennis Powers. He's been a stalwart in the home instead community for a number of years. Like Dennis, I'm one of the leaders on our home care team. I just happen to have the sort of the relationship manager for some of your friendly competitor franchises. And so Dennis has graciously asked me to co-present today, since we have a number of webinars we're doing for various HCOA chapters in the future. So, using his familiarity, we could work out, get a little practice run in. And by the way, he put together a much better introduction that Dawn read. So whatever they said about him counts for me too. So last week, if you were attending part 1, you probably recall that section really got deep into how are your insurance, your workers' comp premiums computed, how that big check that you write every single year, what are the factors that just go into the premium and how can you control that? This part 2 is more going to get into depth into what you should do or what you can do once claims do occur, how to mediate and mitigate them, once they do happen, because let's face it, they're going to happen. And all of this fits together because the more you do once claims do occur to try to get the best overall outcome, the better your workers' comp pricing is going to be. Just a couple of housekeeping items. And Dawn mentioned, Dennis and I, we like to keep this conversational. Please put questions in the chat box. If I'm speaking, Dennis will try to interrupt me and ask, and vice versa. And then, of course, we also will do Q&A at the end. And then any materials that we discuss in this presentation are available to you if you email us. And as I say that, I'm realizing, hey, Dennis, are you sharing the presentation yet? You're driving and I don't see it on my screen.
Oh, yeah, I got to share.
I guess that'd be important, right? So.
Well, yeah, and by the way, some of the forms are customized to fit Home Instead directly. Yeah,
Fantastic.
let me get that
so
share thing.
Speaking of working out the kinks, so we'll
and here we go.
Okay, there we go.
Again, I'm a Teams guy, and last week I got it just I'm on 3 screens right now and I don't know where to look. Teams is like right here. Zoom, I got 3 things going on at once.
Right, exactly.
So yeah.
So okay, so Dennis, next slide, please. So in today's presentation,
I gotta scroll down so it starts from the beginning. So if you're a speed reader, that's the presentation from last week. But we'll get to the.
You know what's good? I know that there's hundreds more people that are popping in right now because everyone wants to be a few minutes late for the presentation.
Yeah, sorry. I think
those of you who were here last week probably are recognizing some of these slides. So we will get to
talk slower.
There we go. There we go. All right. So what are we going to talk about in this presentation? I should also, since we've just delayed a little bit, this is a shorter conversation than the one we had last week. All right. So as I mentioned, this is about mitigating and mediating the claims once they happen. What we're going to talk about in this presentation, I won't read these to you, but we're going to break down just the core essentials of what the workers' comp benefits are. The big takeaway, or one of the large takeaways here, is freezing the facts. Accident investigation is one of the few tools that, as an employer, as your broker, as the insurance carrier, that you have in your tool belt. I always use the analogy that a workers' comp claim is like a game of chess, except for the injured worker, their attorney, and their doctor, their medical team. They have like a couple extra horses, and we're operating with just pawns. So one of the few tools we have is freezing the facts. Return to work is another tool we have. Dennis is going to talk about post-offer medical questionnaires, and if you're using them, and if you're not, what the benefits are. We're going to talk about proactive claim reviews with your broker and the insurance carrier. And then we're going to touch on the benefits of nurse triage. During this time, we'll also probably bring up some anecdotes, which maybe will resonate with you. Like I said, if you have a specific question as we're going along, please put them in the chat box, not chat box. Okay.
Yeah, let me know, because I don't really know when someone's asking a question.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
watching on my screen.
So this, by the way, is a brand new slide. You're the first group to see it. I put it together over the last couple of days. It was a week where we had a lot of different injuries that I wasn't sure were really work related. So the spirit of workers' comp is the injury to the caregiver, or it could be an office worker, supposed to arise out of and during the course and scope of the employment. So kind of during the time frame of when they're working, and some kind of work function that caused the injury. Clumsiness doesn't necessarily mean a work comp claim. And I think we have a knee-jerk reaction to think because someone was clocked in, anything that happens during that time frame when they're clocked in is a work-related claim. They have something with a lot of states called an idiopathic claim, where it's just there's no reason for the person to fall, like their knee gave out, their ankle gave out. They're clumsy, they tripped over their own feet. What we're trying to do with Home Instead is create a culture change and make your staff think about, maybe we shouldn't volunteer workers' comp as the exclusive remedy to deal with this injury. Maybe we should be compassionate and talk to the employee, but not offer workers' comp as a solution, because there was no specific work function that caused it. So a couple examples of the claims that caused me to put this on there, and it was first time Gary's seen it as well. 3 situations. One was an 80-year-old caregiver, working with 2 80-year-old clients down in the Southeast. And she had a history of falling she's 80 years old and she just had a history. The family was really grateful that she was employed and gave her something to do. And she went out voluntarily to I'm going to go out and get the mail. And she fell, but she didn't fall because she was carrying something. She just fell because she kept falling. That's something I've been going back and forth with the owner on, and we have not turned in a claim because she has Medicaid or Medicare covering her bills. So there is no work comp claim for that. But a lot of people would have had a knee-jerk reaction and said, you know what happened while you're on the clock? Let's turn that in as a work comp claim. So it's been 3 weeks now when we don't have a claim in yet, and the family's fine with it. They totally understand why there's no claim being reported. But then we had one, we actually just did a claim review yesterday with one of the Massachusetts owners. And I was of the understanding that the caregiver just tripped over her own feet. So we set up a claim review yesterday. It was a claim adjuster, me, and then because of that nor'easter storm, the HR person for the Home Instead couldn't get on the call in the first 10 minutes. But again, I was under the understanding that she just was clumsy, tripped over her own feet. Immediately, the claim adjuster said, well, actually, she was vacuuming and she tripped while she was vacuuming. Well, that changed the whole dynamic, because I was like, why aren't we fighting this thing? But something like that's harder to fight because she was actually doing some housekeeping. But then another one came up 2 days ago, and it was a 70-year-old caregiver. She was just sitting in a chair, and when she got up, her ankle gave out on her, and she fell, and she injured herself. And that's not something we consider a work-related claim. That kind of falls under the definition of idiopathic claim. So just you think about those when you're talking to your staff, and if they're the ones talking to the injured worker, let's just not volunteer workers' comp. Ultimately, it could end up being a work comp compensable claim. But if the minute you turn it in, it's going to be the adjuster is going to put reserves on it, and the minute your employee thinks that they hear workers' comp, they're thinking, oh yeah, this is definitely covered. So again, I think the idea of just being empathetic, keeping in communication with them, not volunteering workers' comp is something people need to think about. But in also having clearly defined work duties that employees sign off on. In some states, I can't remember every single one of them. If they deviate from a job description, you can deny coverage of a claim. So like good examples would be, caregivers shouldn't be walking dogs. They shouldn't be shoveling. They shouldn't be landscaping. In 2019, I went out to Massachusetts and we did a happy hour with a lot of the Massachusetts owners. And there was an owner who has since sold that I didn't really know that well, but he was showing me a video of his caregiver in the backyard of the client's house with a full-blown wheelbarrow and doing landscaping. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, if she gets injured, how are you going to explain that to the insurance company? They think they're in a house providing companionship, not landscaping. So it's just a lot of things you can control with how you communicate with your employee. But again, just don't have that knee-jerk reaction of turning in a claim. Again, this is the first time I've ever done this slide. We'd love some feedback on it. We're just trying to get people to stop just automatically turning in everything as a work comp claim, because insurance companies will fight. But if it's not turned in the first place, there's no reserves, there's no claim against your policy. Any thoughts on that, Gary? What do you think of that one?
Sorry, I was unmuting myself. Yeah, I agree. I like the idea of, I like the idea of just being a little more shrewd when you report claims, but we don't want to talk out of both sides of our mouth. Last week, and we would maintain this, we do not think it's a good idea for folks to pay out of your own pocket workers' comp claims. I think the real gist of this slide is if there is a gray area where someone gets injured, potentially due to age, potentially because they were doing outside of their work duties, let's have a conversation before you immediately put it in.
That's a good point, Gary, because a lot of times we'll get calls, like for me, I'm the home instead guy, Gary does other franchises. We'll talk it through before a claim is presented. We have that kind of relationship with the owner we work with. So again, it's just kind of a partnership between us and who we work with, and just communicating with the HR staff and about, what should go in and what shouldn't go in. And again, if you sit on it for a few days, because again, it's a very gray area, you're not going to be slapped on the wrist for that. If you sit on it for months, we're going to talk about what can happen to you a couple slides from now. So actually the next slide. So this was the first slide, but I just added that one we just did. And I'm not sure if that's where it fits. Maybe it goes at the back. But this is it seems so basic, common work comp benefits. But when I was a claim adjuster, one thing that we did back in the 90s, I'm 52, but it was in the 90s, we interviewed a lot of claimants after their claims had settled. Illinois, very litigious state, can't really talk to them. But after the claim was closed, we asked a lot of people, like, why'd you get an attorney? Like, what drove you to lawyer up? Lawyer up is a new term I've been using lately, not back then. And a lot of times the answer was, I was afraid. I didn't know what was going to happen next. So if any of you, or like Eric, I saw you, bud, on there, you're New York. If you were to just Google New York Workers' Compensation Commission, Georgia Workers' Compensation Commission, pretty much any state that you're in, there's always some kind of handbook that will give you the basics. And really, the people at your organization that talk to the injured worker, it's good for them to be well versed about what's going to happen. Okay, so I'll just do a Cliff Note version of what the typical benefits are. But like in Illinois, there's a handbook, and you can print it out, I think, in Spanish and English. And it's always good to have in a drawer. And again, the people that talk to the injured worker should be well versed with the basics. So medical benefits. there's no co-pays, there's no deductibles for the injured worker. That's something that scares them. Oh, I'm going to be out of pocket for this. Temporary total disability, that's what they call lost wages. That's when someone's written off of work from a doctor and they're off of work for an extended period of time. Sometimes it's a serious enough injury where they're just completely written off of work. There's no restrictions given. So typically what happens is they're paid 2/3 of their average weekly wage while they're off of work. So you'll hear from the claim adjuster and they'll want 52 weeks worth of wages. It'll take the average of that and then they'll pay 2/3 of that. It doesn't, they don't pay taxes on it. If you had anyone having deductions out of their paycheck, that wouldn't be part of the process with the insurance company. It's straight up 2/3 of their average weekly wage. But kind of in that same little pie piece is temporary partial disability, which kind of fits in with something we're going to talk about a little bit later, which is your ability to take an injured worker back to work when they have restrictions. It's very complicated with your industry. What are they going to do if they can't, help someone off a toilet and they can't stand for more than, or lift more than 25 pounds or stand for more than a couple hours? What are they going to come to your office and what are they going to do there? I've had some situations where they bring a worker back to the office and that worker just, all they do is talk about their work comp claim with the rest of the staff. And it's just not a good thing to have in the workplace environment. So you have to decide, can we accommodate? What you need to know is you're not supposed to, you don't have to bring them back to the full wages, the full hours. If they're going to come in, maybe they'll do some training again, go through training modules again. Maybe they'll answer some phones. Maybe they'll do some stuff in the office. Maybe they could be an assistant to another caregiver. The biggest takeaway is you don't want them sitting at home getting comfortable, eating bonbons and watching Ellen on TV. Because the longer they're doing that, they're losing their motivation to return to work. So temporary partial disability bridges that gap between what they were making pre-injury and then what you're going to pay them. Maybe they're making $12 an hour, but you're going to pay them $8 an hour. The insurance company will say, hey, Eric, I'm going to keep picking on you because you're the only name I've seen so far. Eric, send us the wages you paid them, and we'll pay 2/3 the difference. We'll bridge that gap. So a lot of people think, oh, I got to take them back to work 40 hours, however many hours they're working pre-injury at the same rate of pay. No, it's whatever you feel is the right amount. And again, it gets them back into the workforce, keeps them motivated, and it will shrink the size of your claim. Okay. Permanent partial disability. That's where now listen, these first two are the ones that you're having a conversation with the employee. They're going to leave the office and no copay, no deductibles. I'm going to be paid almost the same amount after taxes. Don't talk about this one. Don't talk about permanent partial disability. That's when someone's injured to the point where in some states, the attorneys are going to be haggling saying, oh, they have a permanent injury. Indiana, I love Indiana. Indiana, the doctor has final say, and the doctor gives an impairment rating. And what happens is it's a mathematical formula based upon the wages and the body part that was injured. They'll make a settlement offer. But if in Indiana, the doctor's like, hey, you're 100%, we're going to give you a 0% impairment rating, you get nothing. You get no permanency. But in other states that are really litigious, like Illinois, California, and New York, it's the attorneys that are doing all the haggling. And I mentioned, it's sitting on claims too long. As a claim adjuster, I was never penalized. I probably should have been. I use my gut, which thankfully you can't see my gut from this vantage point. But I worked off of my gut instinct on claims, and I would deny benefits sometimes. And I was pretty good. I came from, I think a lot of you were probably in a presentation last week. I was a private investigator. I traveled around the country in a van. I was a guy in a van down by the river, and I filmed almost all work comp fraud, and I saw the worst of it. People that were faking injuries left and right. So I came in really jaded into the system. So when I was handling work comp claims, they were giving me the worst of the worst, because I had some skills with investigating things. So, but if I didn't have, not nowadays, if I didn't have a basis to deny benefits, the adjuster for the insurance company, I could be penalized. You, as the employer who is delayed on getting the claim reported to the insurance company, you could be penalized because they're not getting their treatment, they're not getting their payments made, and then that usually leads to litigation. So it's one of those things where insurance companies, if you remember part one of the presentation, insurance companies do keep an eye out for lag time from when the injury happened to when it was reported to them. So they do definitely look at those things. Gary, any thoughts on that one?
No, you nailed it. But we do have a question. Speaking to Eric, Eric has a great question that probably goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the last slide. He says, wondering about pre-existing health conditions. We had someone years ago that had a movement disorder. She fell and broke her hip, and that became a claim. That was, of course, prior to the relationship with InZone. So I have some thoughts on that, and then Dennis, please complete me and Dennis not only finish each other's sentences, but sometimes we start each other's sentences, and that gets a little confusing for people. Yeah, so a pre-existing condition, it really just depends on the state because each state has a different causation threshold. For example, in Illinois, I always make, where we're based, I always make the joke that if any of us on this Zoom were to go get an MRI of our back, I am sure we all have at least one bulging disc somewhere. Well, all it really takes in Illinois is for me with my bulging disc, as a guy who sits in front of a computer all day, to load a ream of paper into a photocopier. And that's when all of a sudden the acute pain happens. And that is most of the time, that's a workers' comp injury. I think Dennis mentioned Eric, you're in New York, very similar there, but there's some states that have a much higher threshold for causation. And Dennis, you want to fill in some of the blanks there?
Yeah, and Eric, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the post-offer medical questionnaire that kind of addresses that. It's a free tool that will give you everything you need to know. In fact, we have an office in Gastonia, North Carolina, that implemented the post-offer medical questionnaire. We'll get to that in a little bit, and we'll circle back and answer that question, but it really helped them understand what they were hiring. David has a good question. I was told any wages the insurance company pays adversely affects your future insurance rate more than if our company pays wages through light duty. And that's a correct statement. Not only is that a correct statement, David, but insurance companies, there's not as many work comp providers for this industry because they know it's a challenge for you to take someone back to work with temporary partial disability. So it's a common question Gary and I or someone else from our team will be asked is, hey, there's a lot of indemnity claims where someone's been losing time from work. Did they even make an effort to bring them back to work? So from an underwriting perspective, temporary partial disability looks more favorable to you than someone being completely off work with temporary total disability when they had restrictions that you could have accommodated. Again, it's not easy with your industry. And any indemnity paid, you lose that medical only discount, which we talked about in the first part of the presentation last week. Did that answer your question, David?
Can I fill in one? Okay, cool. I was just gonna say, David, I was gonna say one last thing to Dennis's point. Sorry if this is repetitive. Even getting them back for a little bit, even if it's 6 hours a week in the office counting paper clips, and the insurance company's paying more of that time off. It's still getting someone off the couch, which is a huge benefit to you. I don't know if you saw, but Matt has a question. What's an acceptable lag?
Yeah, I saw that. So here's the next slide. And again, we have a cheat sheet for probably 2/3 of the states. Again, you can find this information if you were to Google your state's Workers' Compensation Commission. But this one addresses the waiting period in the state before a worker's entitled to lost wages, temporary total disability. And we talked about that last week. Essentially, they're trying to discourage work comp fraud by trying to eliminate the soft tissue injuries where someone could, fabricate a soft tissue injury, get written off work for a couple of days. So Illinois, it's a 3-day waiting period. In North Carolina, it's 7 days. So Matt, I would probably say a couple of days, 2 or 3 days, probably tops. Definitely within your waiting period before they're entitled to lost wages. And then insurance companies would understand that you're trying to figure things out on your end. I mean, neither you nor the insurance company is obligated to pay lost wages to the injured worker by state law, unless they're off of work in North Carolina, it's got to be more than 21 days. Illinois, it's 14 days. So, but the rule of thumb, don't sit on it too long, but don't report it within the first 30 minutes after it happened. Sit on it. I mean, now listen, if someone needs surgery, it's completely legitimate. There's no questions about it. Get it off your desk right away. Get it into an adjuster. But if you need to do an investigation, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, give it a day or two. You're not going to be penalized for that. But they do monitor, but it's when it's like 10 days, 30 days, 60 days. There was nothing worse than being a claim adjuster and getting a claim like 6 months later when a client was trying to pay it themselves. And it just that snowball effect. It just kept, more bills. Oh, now they got an attorney. Holy cow, we're paying our own attorney. Okay, enough is enough. Let's dump it off to the insurance company. And then I'm supposed to do an investigation, for something that happened 6 months earlier. And Gary's about to cover how we can address that. So hopefully that answered your question, Matt, but just don't sit on it too long, I would say. And by the way, this is the first thing we can send you. I've got a lot of these, but not every state. And I'm going to let Gary take this part so I can get a little bit of water in me.
Okay. We mentioned in the onset, in terms of topics, one of the key chess moves that you have as an employer is accident investigation. And I know that sounds like a big sort of dynamic, term or, accident. Whoa, really, it's for any report of injury, even if you have an employee that said, hey, I just want to let you know, I pulled my forearm muscle, but I don't want to do anything about it. We want to make sure we investigate and freeze the facts. You're going to hear me say the term freeze the facts because a couple things happen when you don't do an investigation. People's memories fade. So let's say someone has a minor forearm injury and, 3 months later, same employee says, hey, now I have carpal tunnel that was because of this soft tissue thing that I didn't want to report or didn't want to claim, a few months back, but now we've all forgotten, like what actually happened on that day? What did they tell me immediately? The other reason you want to freeze the facts is, let's face it, when injured workers have tasted the sweet workers' comp nectar, they want to taste it again. So if they get a big payout on an injury from a few years ago, they're going to want to get another big payout. And if we don't freeze the facts, their story may change because they're being coached by somebody. Sometimes it's malevolent, can't say the word. Sometimes because they're really trying to fraud the system. Sometimes just because they're scared. They get injured at work or, when it's under questionable circumstances, and then a family member says, hey, you better change your story, otherwise you're not going to get that workers' comp payout. So again, what we're trying to do is freeze the facts. We have an accident investigation kit that I'm sure Dennis has shared with some of you, if not, some of your colleagues. And the idea of the accident investigation is kind of doing what I think it was like a 360-degree investigation. So the first one, and I don't know if we have, I think we do have the slides. Here we go. Cool. So the first one is the employee injury report. Now, if someone says they have, again, I'll use the forearm aches, and they report it to you, and they're just saying, yeah, it's bothering me a little bit. You can send this to them to fill out. Now, if they have a broken arm and it's hanging there, they're not going to fill this out before they seek any treatment. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to get their statement. How'd you get injured? What's hurting? So on and so forth. And we have, can I speak louder, please? Okay, sure. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Sharon, is that okay? How's that sound? Does that sound okay?
I don't have a, let me move my computer closer to me because I don't have a headset. Okay. So, where was I on the exit? Not much better.
Is it Gary or is it both of us?
I can hear you guys okay.
They're both good in my system. Oh, okay.
Gary, put your face right up to the camera,
Can you hear me now? Am I
like
crossing?
right up to the camera,
Okay,
so they can
anyway.
see up your
Yeah,
nostrils.
Sorry,
it does-
Sharon, we can do a one-on-one presentation if you can't hear us, and I'm not being snarky, I'm being serious. So the idea behind the employee accident form, like I said, is to get their statement. We're not police, you're not the police, but you're trying to get in their words what caused the injury. Did they trip? Did they feel it? Doing what sort of movement were they doing? And again, it's you trying to get those facts frozen, but also some good intel for maybe how you might be able to prevent an injury down the road. The key thing that I think you want to do when you're asking your employee to fill this out is let them know that this is for their benefit. You want to get their statement because you want to know what happened so you can make a safer environment. Now, the real reason we want you to do this, I mean, that is one of the reasons, but the more important reason is you'd be surprised if this hasn't happened to you. Me and Dennis have seen it a number of times that someone will actually write down on their statement, oh yeah, over the weekend I was lifting my grandson up and I felt a huge pinch in my lower back. I thought I was fine, but then the first thing I did when I got to work on Monday really aggravated it. Well, as we discussed before about causation, in some states, that's not going to be covered. Now we're admitting that you originally got hurt off work. And so, again, we want to freeze those facts because the moment they get an attorney, the attorney is going to be like, hey, forget the fact you lifted up your grandson. So
Yeah.
again, we're trying to freeze those facts. We have this form in English, Spanish. We also have it in Polish because we have a large Polish speaking community up here in the Chicago area. And so here you go. But obviously you can Google Translate into whatever, second language might be prevalent in your areas. We also have the supervisor report. Now, this is the person that the injured employee called and sort of gave the initial report to. What did they report to you as a supervisor? And it might be the folks on this webinar right now that are actually receiving that. It might be someone else that actually gets those calls. You want them to fill it out within 24 hours because it's the same thing. People's memories fade. And maybe the employee, using my example, didn't write down on their statement because they kind of figured out they shouldn't, that they got originally hurt by lifting up their grandson. But if they say that your supervisor, they say that to you, you want to make sure that you get that written down. And then finally, a witness form, which again, you're not normally going to have witnesses if it happens at one of your clients' homes, but believe it or not, I think Dennis, you told me you have a good story about this one where the client could have actually given a good story. So I'll let you tell that one.
Yeah, and Gary's right. Memories fade, but also a really important part is relationships change. You might terminate somebody and then they're a hostile witness, but at least you had their statement in the past. I mean, keep in mind as a claim adjuster, and again, I'm 52, this is back in the 90s. There was no internet, no email. Basically, it was a manual form that you would fax over. In Illinois, it was called the Form 45. Every state has their own work comp form. But remember, that is you or your HR person sitting across from the injured worker. And you're the one filling it out. And then you turn it into the insurance company and they say, that's not what I said. So again, just document.
Yep.
And we have this customized to home instead. It's a Word document. You can make changes to it. My story, it was one of my more frustrating ones. It happened in the Northeast. I was mad at my client, one of your peers. I was mad at the insurance company. It was a problematic employee who hadn't worked there that long, just really bad attitude. She alleged she slipped and fell and was injured on a loose rug in the client's house. And then, I found out the claim, it kind of blew up. Once you commit to a claim as a claim adjuster, it's really hard to decommit and put that toothpaste back in the tube and turn the claim upside down and now deny it. So it's something you want to jump on right away. And if you're able to get these forms, pretty quickly, and Matt, that's kind of why we're giving you a couple days. You guys got cameras on your phones. Get out there, talk to the client if they can be beneficial, if they're of sound mind. In this case, the client was of sound mind, and what neither my home instead did or the insurance adjuster did, they didn't talk to the client, but they also didn't go over and look at the place. Had they would have seen that rug was glued to the ground. It wasn't going anywhere. But at that point, the insurance company that will remain nameless, Erie Insurance out of Pennsylvania, they were committed to it and became a big claim, and we could have fought that thing, and just so many steps were missed on that one. So, and then one time as a claim adjuster, a UPS driver happened to be in the right place at the right time and saw something happen. So if you have these, if you give this along with that first report of injury or within days of reporting the claim to the adjuster to give them more information to work off of.
Hey, let me make one more point before you go ahead. The other thing you want to do there with is if an employee refuses treatment because they don't feel they're injured enough, get the statement anyway, and have them fill out that they didn't want treatment, and that's so they can never come back and said they were injured and you told them not to do anything. Again, you're getting their side of the story, the facts of that frozen, so it can't be used against you.
David's got a good point, and we got a slide to address it. David's saying he's found some claim adjusters that are better than others.
Yes.
You know, can I request a specific claim adjuster I worked with in the past, or do I have to stick with the one assigned to the claim? I'll let me answer that in a second here. This one, actually, I would love to get your opinion on this one. And that first one I did, because we'd love to get some feedback, good or bad. This is one that the idea behind this is this works better if you're a manufacturer. This works better when you have all your employees under one roof. When the week is over, before they leave and after they clock out, they're signing off that it's a safe work day or a safe work week. I understand ClearCare, they had some kind of telephonic thing. It's garbage. It's so easy to say I hit the wrong button, I wasn't paying attention. Getting something in writing is gold. So the spirit of this is to, you know, those weekend warriors, those people are in softball, bowling leagues, or moving furniture around the house. They get hurt over the weekend. They come in on Monday morning and say, hey, I was hurt on Friday. And you have something like this. This has helped have claims denied, this one stupid little form. But it's not as easy for you because your employees are out in the field. So it's capturing the spirit of it. I remember Mike Mellinger is a guy I've been working with since 2010. He's out by us. He told me years ago before COVID, there was some kind of tablet I think you guys were getting. He seemed to think there was some way to capture the spirit of this, and rather than the telephone prompt, the ClearCare, capture something like that. Do any of you think you could utilize something like this, or if you thought about it, you might be able to put something together? Because what you're trying to do is it's really prevent someone to come in the week later that was injured, you know, over the weekend, and they're trying to get it covered by work comp. Anyone have any thoughts on that? If you guys don't think it's practical, I'll probably pull this off the presentation.
Yeah.
We'll
We'll
give
wait
you 30 minutes
We'll
to
wait for
answer.
responses. We'll wait for response. It's also good, by the
Respond
way.
as we're going on to the next slide,
Yeah.
and let us know. Gary, you want to do a couple of these?
Yeah. Report your claims. We talked about it a little bit. The longer you wait to report, so I don't want to be too repetitive, but the longer you wait to report, the more things can go awry. You know, someone had asked earlier about the lag time. I believe so the longer, you know, the more lag time before reporting, the more things that can go awry. Again, the stories can change if you didn't get the accident investigation. You may get someone who had a cut finger, and you're decided, send them to the clinic, and I'll pay for that, you know, the stitch or whatever. And then next thing you know, they actually cut through their, you know, their tendon, and now they need a surgery that's going to keep them off for 8 weeks. And the insurance carriers the adjusters can't get out in front of it. So just, again, don't be afraid to report claims. I know that's kind of antithetical to what we said in the beginning, but what we said in the beginning was not everything is a claim. If you suspect this happened out of work and in the course of employment, report the claims. No reason to sit on them, except for while you're sort of waiting for more information. This is a slide, to be honest with you, it's a little bit, it's got some older data. We've been using this slide for a while, but the point is still the same.
I was in my teens.
Yeah, exactly. The idea here is the longer, all the data remains the same. The longer there's a lag in reporting, the bigger the claim. So,
Yeah.
Hey, Dennis, we're getting some responses on your question. I'm not sure if you
Yeah,
want to-
so I saw the comment, and Todd too, the ClearCare thing, it's better than nothing, but it won't hold up unless it's really a signature, a wet signature, or whatnot. Yeah, the way, a future slide we're gonna get into about the post-offer medical questionnaire, and then how you would approach that, safe workday, safe work week. I mean, listen, your staff's already doing it. I mean, they're doing it daily with ClearCare. It's how you frame it. It's how you relay that message of why you're doing it. You're protecting them. Your insurance company wants to know as soon as possible something has happened. You just want your employees to be in a safe environment. But yeah, it could, but I know that for a lot of my clients in manufacturing, it's never been an issue, and that's where it's easier to do because they're all under one roof. Love your claim adjuster. And again, keep it, what exactly is there's no what exactly is a percentage penalty held against on late reporting? It's not really, it's just a fine. It's not, there's no definition for it. It's the state where the Work Comp Commission would fine you. Again, don't fret about that. Don't fret about sitting on a claim for a couple of days. It's when you know about something and you sit on it for a long time. And a long time to me is more than 10 days, maybe even 7 days. Kind of within that, maybe on the high end, a state will have a 7-day waiting period. Anything beyond that, you're going to get on the radar of everybody. And your employee's probably going to have an attorney by then because they're like, what is going on? Yeah. Love your claim adjuster. It was the worst job. I talked about it. It was my worst job I ever had, but I don't think I wouldn't be talking to you if I wasn't a claim adjuster, because that's how I met my first home instead. I did this presentation, an updated version, obviously now, back in, it was either late 2009, early 2010. And this is how Gary and I, we meet people. We're on as other vendors for other franchises because, we do a lot of work with the Home Care Association. So 2 weeks from now, we're doing one in Alabama. Next month, we're doing one in Washington, and then hopefully more. But as a claim adjuster, you don't go to school to be a claim adjuster. My son goes to Ole Miss. They're one of like 35 colleges that have a risk management and insurance program. They maybe have some claim adjusting classes, but people just seem to end up there. And that's kind of how I was. I had a job offer to work undercover at Motorola and look for drug use and theft and go from plant to plant, or work for an insurance company. And I just wanted to have a normal job, and I wanted to date. I wanted to have fun. I couldn't do that when I was a private investigator. I couldn't do that if I was bouncing around from plant to plant. I wanted to have a life. So what was important to me, and I talk to adjusters all the time, because I mean, I've probably done 4 claim reviews already this week, some for people on this call. And how many claims do you have? What is your pending? I had over 200 claims. And average amount of time it takes to start a new claim is 2 to 4 hours. So if you're getting 3 or 4 claims a week, you've already eaten up a day and a half to 2 days of the week. And then, there's not enough time in a day to look at every claim. So what we like to see is an insurance company that has pendings of around 100, 125. So when you report a claim to the insurance company, they have what they call 3-point contact that should happen within 24 to 48 hours of when you reported the claim to the insurance company. They're going to call you first. They're going to, ask you information. Hopefully you fill out some investigation, some reports. They're going to talk to the injured worker next, and then they're going to talk to the doctor's office. And after that's all said and done, they're going to reserve the claim. And that's the first time they're going to think about, all right, how much money do I get to put aside for indemnity? And an indemnity is temporary total or temporary partial disability, but also a possible settlement down the road. Medical reserves, expenses, legal, surveillance, or whatever. And we're going to talk about claim reviews in a second. What is the financial rating of your insurance company? My last real claims job was in the early 2000s, and I worked for a company out of California called Fremont, and they went belly up. And it was a 6-month process of department by department by department being laid off. And then the last the people standing were the claims people. That's when I got on the agency side. I took a job with an agency, and it changed my life. The grass was not greener when I bounced around from insurance carrier to insurance carrier, but the financial rating of the insurance company, Gary and I, we work with A-rated, like A- on up to A+. If it's unrated carrier, if it's a B-rated carrier, the qualities, you're going to get what you pay for with that. Medical only versus indemnity, we talked about that in the first presentation. You want to preserve that medical only status of a claim by making sure you report it the right way. Again, understanding what your waiting period is in your state, because you'll maintain that 70% discount on your experience rating. Special handling instructions. This is, I think it was David asked this question. So this is where you try to ask the insurance company, can I have a dedicated adjuster? It makes no sense to me to have 5 different adjusters on 5 different claims when you could have one adjuster working with your staff and really understanding your business, developing a rapport, and you'll get favors from that. Unfortunately, not every carrier will do that, but also being notified of a settlement or a reserve bump. Those are 3 things that are you could ask for. You might get it sometimes, you might not get it sometimes. So we're getting close to the end, folks. Good questions. We didn't have any questions the first one. Post offer medical questionnaire. I could save some time here because we have a 20-minute video on our blog section. We're happy to email you a link. It's me interviewing an office in North Carolina near Charlotte, where the idea behind a post-offer medical questionnaire kind of maybe talks about what Eric was asking earlier, is to try to identify pre-existing conditions. And this is what it looks like. And you do it for everyone you've made an offer to. And if you watch that video, I go into that video asking questions that all of you would wonder about. Like, do you get pushback? Has anyone sued you? And they answer all those questions, and they are willing to help you. I've already emailed them. They're willing to help you get this thing set up because it changed the dynamic of their claims that they were having. Now they know what they're getting. You're trying to come out with three outcomes. I'm going to hire the person as is. We're going to hire them, but put them with someone else now that we know about the restrictions, or we can't hire them. That office had all those scenarios play out and no pushback. So yeah, this is going to be, I think this is going to be put on the website. So if you or any of your friends are having a hard time falling asleep, just go on the website, put it on, and you'll be out like that. But we have all this information, but really watching that video, we'll send you the link, or you go on our website, InZone Insurance. It's in the blog section. It's 20 minutes long. And to me, the 3 common types of injuries, I've got 4 fingers up. Patient handling, aggravations of pre-existing conditions, and slips, trips, and falls. This one really helps with aggravations of pre-existing conditions. You know what you're going to have. Doesn't mean you can't be sued for discrimination, but it's something that you really, should think about implementing. So I'm going to have Gary do this one, and we only have, I think, a couple more slides and we're done.
Only 15 more slides. Claim reviews. Okay. It is what it sounds like. Regardless of who you work with, whether it's us or someone local or someone else on the vendor list, if they're not doing claim reviews for you or encouraging you to, you're missing a huge piece to how you mitigate claims when they do happen. And a claim review would be set up with you, your broker, and the adjuster. Some carriers actually have claims supervisors that can actually speak to a number of claims. And what you're trying to do here is basically collaborate together. You always want to, we've been in the insurance industry for 20 plus years, each of us. We understand that the subject matter is not everyone's favorite, but everyone is here to collaborate. No one is here to try and just, write checks and things of that nature. And what we've experienced is that by and large, yes, there are bad claims adjusters out there because they're overworked. Everybody is operating in good faith. Nobody wants to write a check for a single dollar more than they have to, but sometimes they're just squeezed for time. So it's the squeaky wheel gets the grease sort of concept where you get everyone on the line together, and maybe there's nothing. Maybe the claim's being handled perfectly. It's just a big claim. However, you'd be surprised how often, just in the course of conversation, you as an owner may say, wow, well, this caregiver, we know from their best friend, they're already working for some other agency. And the claims adjuster will say, well, that's news to me. I didn't know that. We need to do surveillance now. But some of those items don't come up in just the course of normal conversation because everyone's, again, assuming I'm going to do my job, you do yours, and we're just going to assume that everyone's working in good faith on their own trajectory without those paths crossing for collaboration. So we highly encourage you, look, for small medical only claims, there may not be anything to really talk about, but anytime you have a claim that you are so suspicious of, you want to make sure that you let Dennis know or whoever else you may be working, and that you want to make sure that you are collaborating with that person as well as your claims adjuster. You'd also, as Dennis has already described, because he's got a great background in claims adjusting, there's times that he's thought of something that the claims adjuster just hasn't thought of in terms of another way to sort of circumvent or minimize the outcome of the claim. When are claim reviews typically done? You can do them whenever, but there's usually two inflection points that you want to think about. We talked in part one about your experience mod, and whether you're an NCCI state or your state has its own experience mod, it's the same sort of juncture. That data is processed 6 months after your policy period ends. So clearly, if there's a reserve that is too inflated, you want to make sure that you're having that claim review a couple months before that information, that stat card, we call it, goes into the rating bureau. So that's one inflection point. So again, before your experience mod gets calculated, you want to make sure you're talking about any claims that are a thorn in your side. And then the other time that you want to do a claims review is, we call it 60, 90 days ahead of when your renewal is coming up. Same idea. If there are some inflated reserves that need to come down, that gives time for the adjuster working collaboration to lower those reserves so that your overall loss history looks better for when it's time to go out to the marketplace. So next slide.
Great point. But the only thing I would add to that is that I've made some arrangements with my account manager, Sharon, where she's going to help me with the renewal activities. So because I work with the Home Instead group, and I work with between 90 and 100 owners, and it's going to free up more time for me to be more hands-on. And some of you on this call, just recently, I feel like I'm doing more quick 5-10 minute calls than ever before. And if she does the renewal part of it, hey, Todd, I need renewal lapse, I can do this part of it, and then I'll go over the renewal with you. I enjoy doing it, but the one thing that I seem to be bringing up a lot and no one else, the adjusters aren't, social media checks. One quick story is from the Midwest, probably 7 or 8 years ago. A young caregiver in her 20s alleged she was injured, bedridden, and on Instagram was a photo of her skydiving in tandem. So
was she in the bed when she was skydiving?
She was attached to the bed. I think she was dropped out of a plane like a Jack Reacher. Did anyone get that one? Okay, let's get going because we this went a little bit longer than I thought. Nurse triage is something that we're investigating. Essentially, it's a way for before you report an injury to the insurance company, we connect you with Coventry. Last time I checked, it was $85 a case, so you pay for it. But your injured worker and your staff call a nurse, talk to a nurse, 3 questions, and they might say, you know what, you got to go to a doctor. Or they might say, hey, listen, take some ibuprofen, ice it down. We're going to call you back a day or 2 later. And what we're trying to do is for every 10 incidents that turn into claims, maybe only 6 of them do. So we're doing some more research on that, but Coventry is the main player. They work with a lot of insurance companies. And we got one last slide and then we're done, but great questions. It was good to have more interaction than last week. It's talking to a blank screen. It's kind of boring. A lot of your employees are considered traveling employees. But parking lot accidents, being injured, coming from work, they have this rule called ingress egress, where just to brace you, you could have a caregiver injured in a car accident before they've clocked in or out. And a lot of states might find that a compensable work comp claim. Now, if they were going to and from your office, different story, but they consider them traveling employees, especially if you were to let someone go on a vacation with a family. Then they're covered 24/7. Don't let them go to Mexico. Don't let them go on cruises. I think it's Canada, Hawaii, the United States. But also, if you can get a camera in your parking lot, we've seen some alleged injuries happen in parking lots that could have easily been solved with the camera. So that's kind of it. I know I went through that one pretty quick, but it's just a small investment in a camera, or ask your landlord to do something like that. Any thoughts on that, Gary, or any more questions?
No, perfect. Let's open it up. I didn't realize we ran long here, so.
Yeah, it was a lot of good questions though. I thought we were gonna be done in half an hour. So, and I hope people will sit through this and talk to their staff and, give us a chance. If we're not already working with you, really aggressive with advocating for our clients for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, before you hang up, I'm moving to Alabama on Saturday for 4 to 6 weeks with my wife or dog. There is one more presentation that we want to do for the association. I just don't know what the setup is going to be like where I'm going to be living with the Wi-Fi and whatnot. But it's an Insurance 101 presentation. To me, it's more important than this because you're not going to lose your business over workers' comp. There's unlimited coverage for that. Your premiums might go up, but Gary and I really break down every type of insurance you could have outside of workers' comp. We talk about real claims, but most importantly, we talk about exclusions a lot of people don't know. So we do want to get that going, but I want to wait until I get set up next week and see how the Wi-Fi is. But we would love to do that for the association, and that would kind of wrap up our 3-part series. So I wanted to throw that out there.
That's the Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
That was great, guys.
you.
You got so many questions, so you could tell you're just a very engaged audience. Yeah. So for those who asked, yes, the recording is going to be available. Give me like a couple days to just get it up on the website. It takes a while for it to cycle after we hang up. And then sometimes I just might edit it if there's any little, bits on the beginning or end. But then I will put it up on the website and I'll send an email with a link to the webpage. And both this one and the one from last week, February 7th, will be available. And like Dennis said, we will, as soon as you get back, Dennis, and you get situated, we will go ahead and get Insurance 101 scheduled. So maybe sometime mid to late April.
Great. That's the one we're doing, by the way. That's the one we're doing with the Home Care Association. There are exclusions people are not aware of, especially if you have Philadelphia insurance and it's the communicable disease exclusion. And there's a lot you don't know about. And why would you read your policies? But we've been doing presentations for them since 2020 when COVID first hit. And they've asked us to kind of do it again. And there's more exclusions now than ever. So you could be not covered for a potential big claim. So
yeah, so we definitely got to have that sooner rather than later. So for all of you on the phone, we'll as soon as we get that scheduled, we'll send an email out with a link for everybody to register. And so I don't see any more questions. I mean, I think you've got a ton of them answered, so that's fantastic. So I just want to thank Dennis and Gary for their time today. I mean, Dennis and I, we've been working together coming up on 1.5 years now, I want to say. We of course appreciate the partnership with InZone. You guys are quite valuable to us, and you do a lot of business with home healthcare. And so, you've got such a knowledge bank and expertise in the industry. And I'm sure if anybody has any questions, they would love to reach out. Now, did you guys include your contact information?
Yeah, you know what? It might be on the last slide. By the way, I will not be in Omaha this year. I have a conflict. Here's our email address. Please email me. I'm kind of the home instead. We work together, but I'm kind of down the path of the home instead. But with the Insurance 101, we're going to do that together as well for the group here. And thanks for having us. But yeah, I wish I could be there in April, but It's the first time I've missed one in probably over 10 years.
Yeah.
So too
Well,
bad I can't be there.
sometimes there's a conflict. Yeah. And also the end zone information is on the website on the vendor page. So you can always get it from there as well. So
Right.
yeah, I just want to thank you guys again. I have appreciate your time, appreciate everybody's time that came in and joined us today. And we will let you know as soon as we're ready to get our next webinar scheduled. We appreciate
Fantastic.
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good
All right,
day,
have a good day,
guys.
everyone.
Bye.
Take care.
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Yes, happy Valentine's Day.